கொஞ்சம் குறைக்கணும். ஜக பூமி ஜாநாயகம் ஃபைன்.
Namaskaram to everybody. Namaskaram to everybody. We welcome you to Sri Rama Bhakti Samrajya Mahotsavam Day 1 program. We welcome Sri Dushyanth Sridhar for the Pravachanam. We have our chairperson, Sri Murli Elambilan, to give us an all introduction to Dushyanth Sridhar.
Thanks, Rajiv. Good afternoon, everyone. This beautiful evening in our Sri Shiva Vishnu Temple auditorium. After a gap of nearly 2.5 years, more than 2.5 years, due to COVID pandemic, our temple is honored to host Sri Rama Bhakti Samrajya Mahotsavam from today through August 14th, that means next 9 days. The next 9 days events include daily Valmiki Ramayana Parayanam by Sri Suresh Bhagavatar, live from Chennai, and religious discourse by Sri Dushyanth Sridhar ji, right here on our stage. There will be several religious and cultural and educational programs for all 9 days. The idea of celebrating Sri Rama Bhakti Samrajya Mahotsavam in our temple is our humble attempt to celebrate the glory of Sri Rama, the divine beloved king of Ayodhya, the Adarsha Purush, or the ideal man who walked on earth to show what it means to follow one's dharma. It is believed that conducting and participating these functions will be beneficial for universal peace, prosperity, happiness, harmony, good health, and will rid the world of all calamities. As you know, every chapter of the timeless Itihasa, Ramayana, is a treasure of the lessons to face the challenges one would encounter at any stage of life, as a child, as a student, or as an adult. So we thought that the lectures on Srimad Ramayana by Sri Dushyanth Sridhar ji in English during the Ramayana Navham will have immense value to all, our children, our youth, or our adults. I'm glad and so excited that Dushyant ji is here with us after a long struggle with getting the visa processed, because we had so many issues during the course of time. I know most of you know Ms. Dushyant ji, but I had to say a few words. He is a young, academically brilliant, and a chemical engineer from BITS Pilani, and one of the most sought after public speakers in Sanātana Dharma, who renders discourses in English and Tamil all over the world. He delivers discourses on Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavata, Vishnu Purana, Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranama, and whatnot. He delivers lectures to corporates and educational institutions besides speaking at renowned conclaves. He is known in households in India through his discourses in regional and national TV and has a wide spectrum of audience following on YouTube with over 25 million viewers. He rendered over 3,000 discourses in 125 cities across 23 countries in all continents. And right now he is in this Northern America. He has got several awards and accolades nationally and internationally. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and on behalf of the entire congregation of Sri Shiva Vishnu Temple, we welcome you to the temple, Sri Dushyant. I also welcome every one of you to this event from today through the next 9 days, and hope you all will enjoy your time with Dushyant here specifically. I also take this opportunity to thank every one of the congregation who contributed from conception through this day. You all spent countless hours. I'm also requesting all of you to sponsor various pujas and support the temple physically and financially. This is your temple. Last but not least, we are still in the pandemic situation. Please wear your mask, please protect yourself and protect your neighbor. Thank you. Thank you all.
रामानुज दयापात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकं लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये माता पिता युवतयस्तनया विभूतिः सर्वं यदेव नियमेन मदन्वयानाम् आद्यस्य नः कुलपतेर्वकुलाभिरामं श्रीमत्तदङ्घ्रियुगलं प्रणमामि मूर्धना भूतं सरश्च महदाह्वय भट्टनाथ श्रीभक्तिसार कुलशेखर योगिवाहान् भक्ताङ्घ्रिरेणु परकाल यतीन्द्रमिश्रान् श्रीमत्पराङ्कुशमुनिं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम् कूजन्तं राम रामेति मधुरं मधुराक्षरम् आरुह्य कविता शाखां वन्दे वाल्मीकि कोकिलम् वाल्मीकिर्मुनिसिंहस्य कवितावनचारिणः शृण्वन् रामकथानादं कुनयादि परां गतिं वेदवेदे परे पुंसि जायते दशरथात्मजे वेदः प्राचेतसादासीत् साक्षात् रामायणात्मना अंजनानन्दनं वीरं जानकी शोकनाशनं कपीशम् अक्षहन्तारं वन्दे लङ्का भयङ्करं मनोजवं मारुततुल्यवेगं जितेन्द्रियं बुद्धिमतां वरिष्ठं वातात्मजं वानरयूथमुख्यं श्रीरामदूतं शिरसा नमामि आञ्जनेयमदिपाटलाननं काञ्चनाद्रिकमनीयविग्रहं पारिजाततरुमूलवासिनं भावयामि पवमाननन्दनं यत्र यत्र रघुनाथकीर्तनं तत्र तत्र कृतमस्तकाञ्जलिं बाष्पवारि परिपूर्णलोचनं मारुतिं नमत राक्षसान्तकम्. Namaskaram to the August gathering. As said at the commencement, it has been over 4 years for me to have traveled to the States, and of course the visa process was not that easy. With the efforts taken by the management committee here, the volunteers, and with the wishes of Astikas such as you all, it has been possible to be a part of this beautiful Utsavam that celebrates Sri Rama Samrajya Pattabhishekam. So beginning today, which is a Saturday, the 6th of August, till the Sunday, the following Sunday, August 14th, for a stretch of 9 days, I will be speaking on various topics in a certain order that has been sanctioned for a Srimad Ramayana Navaham. Today and tomorrow the lecture is between 3 and 5 p.m. Monday to Friday it is between 7 and 9 p.m. I'm sure there will be people in the vicinity, there will be people who are coming from far off places. It is very cruel and ruthless on my part to say you'll have to come every day. But I'm still going to be ruthless. Please do come every day. And it is a fortune for me to be a part of Navaham, and it is a bhagyam for you also to be a part of Navaham. So please do manage your activities in such a way that you will be able to attend the lecture during the weekdays as well. In a traditional Srimad Ramayana Navaham, the language which is used traditionally will be one of the Indian regional languages, be it Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Hindi, Marathi, Malayalam and so on. But with the advent of technology that is bringing us far and wide, I am coaxed to use Amlecha Bhasha here for 9 days. But there is a saying, Bhasha Geetif Prashasta Bhagavati Bachanat Rajavachopacharat. So if you have to praise the king, it doesn't matter in which language you praise him. The content overtakes the language. So there are certain situations that I may be forced to digress into Tamil, which is my mother tongue, intermittently. Maybe 1% of the entire lot will be in Tamil. Of course, I am very, very happy to bring in references from the other regional languages as well. Those of you who feel that having listened to stalwarts such as Anantarama Dikshitar, Balakrishna Shastri, Sundar Kumar, Krishna Premi, and all of these people who have rendered and done a marvelous job, may find a small disadvantage when it comes to English, because everything that is conveyed in your mother tongue, in your regional language, cannot be translated into English. Nevertheless, I will try my level best to get as close and following the footsteps of Rennacharya and Martinacharya as much as they have bestowed upon us and we have bequeathed from them. So the day 1, the topic cited for today is Sri Rama Jananam. To understand Sri Rama Jananam, we must understand what place is accorded to Srimad Ramayanam in Sanātana Dharma. Why is it first of all called Sanātana Dharma? Yecha Vedavido Vipraha Yecha Adhyatma Chetasaha Te Vadanti Mahatmanam Krishnam Dharmam Sanātanam. This is a shlokam from Sri Mahabharatam, which says, Yecha Veda Vido Vipraha, those of them who are adept in the Purva Kandam of Vedam, which is called as Karma Kandam, and those who are adept in the Uttara Kandam, which is Jnana Kandam, the Upanishads, Yecha Adhyatma Chetasaha, Te Vadanti, they together from the Purva Kandam and the Uttara Kandam, the Mimamsakas have come together. Krishnam Dharmam Sanātanam, whatever Krishna has said is Sanātana Dharmam. So we are introduced to the word Sanātana Dharma in Mahabharatam. Of course, Manu Dharma Shastram says, Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, Na Bruyat, Satyam Apriyam, Priyam Chana Anrutam Bruyat, Yeshaha Dharmaha Sanātanaha. So Manu Dharma Shastram also has a reference to the word Sanātana Dharma. Sanātana means that which is eternal, for which we cannot trace an immediate start date. So that is called Sanātana. Dharmam is the intrinsic feature of any object that we see. To burn is the dharma of fire. To cool is the dharma of water. To forgive is the dharma of the Lord. So Dharmam is the intrinsic feature. Sanātana Dharma is that continuing eternal feature. In Sanātana Dharma, we have many books, scriptures that can guide us. I often quote this example of Swami Sri Dayananda Saraswati, who used to state, if you go ask a devout Christian what is his or her holy book, they would proudly say the Holy Bible. So will a Muslim, a devout Muslim, say the Holy Quran is his or her book. A Sikh would often state the Guru Granth Sahib. What will a Hindu say? A Hindu will say, Swamiji used to remark, welcome to my library. Because we have bequeathed the entire library in Sanātana Dharma, so there is no one book which is the holy book. Of course, today people do say that Bhagavad Gita should be accorded that status. Nevertheless, every scripture in Sanātana Dharma is equally important. But while classifying our granthas, there are certain scriptures which are extremely important, which is called as Mukhya Pramanam. Mukhya Pramanam, so much so that every letter which is being used in that particular scripture is extremely holy. One such Mukhya Pramanam is Srimad Ramayanam. I will give you an example as to why the Mangala Shlokam, the Purva Shlokam states, Kujantam Rama Rameti Madhuram Madhuraksharam. The invocatory verse states that in Ramayanam, Madhura Aksharam, every letter is very important. Why is the letter important? What is so important in Srimad Ramayanam? For this, my Acharya used to give an example of an incident that happened during Rama and Sita's visit to Chitrakuta. Chitrakuta is a small place by the banks of river Mandakini in the upper part of Madhya Pradesh, bordering Uttar Pradesh. So there is one incident which is said to have occurred during Rama's stay in the forest, which should have been in Ayodhya Kandam, but beautifully Valmiki positions that as if Hanuman is narrating it, Sita is narrating it to Hanuman in Sundara Kandam. It is called Kakasura Vrittantam. Rama was in the forest in Chitrakuta, and they had one person who was serving them all the 14 years, 365 days, 24/7. That was Lakshmana. Chitraratnamaya Seshatalpa Mandu Sita Patini Yuchi Juchi Mitri Bhagyame Bhagyamu Saumitri Bhagyame. Sumitra's son Lakshmana was called Saumitri, and he served the divine couple to his best of capabilities. One day, after having a sumptuous lunch, Rama was putting his head on the lap of Sita and was resting for some time. A few minutes later, he could experience a mild tremor, 6.5 on the Richter scale. So he just looked up. Why is this problem? He saw that Sita's body was shivering. She was suffering, she was withering in pain. That is when he looked, and then he saw the thin cloth that covered her chest was drenched in blood. She was hence suffering from that pain, and the blood was still oozing from her soft, tender skin. He looked atop and he saw a crow seated on the branch of a tree. He immediately took a blade of grass and recited the Brahmastra Mantram and released that particular blade of grass. In Dhanurvidya, there is a provision when you can't find the approved weapons around you, you can recite mantras and make any object into an astra. That is called Aishikam. That provision is called Aishikam. Since Rama had mastered this art of using any object, you may be wondering, is it possible to use any object, turn any object into an astram when you can't find a bow and the quiver of arrows around you? I used to have this doubt until I saw some visuals of the Indian Parliament. Any object can turn into an astram. So here, the blade of grass was taken and that was to be released. And Rama released. In Tamil, those of you who can understand Tamil, there is an age-old saying, Vallavanukku pullum ayudam. For the one who is adept, even a blade of grass can become a weapon. So he released that particular Brahmastram and that started chasing the crow. Padma Puranam states, Trin lokan samparikramya tameva sharanam gataha. This particular crow went and knocked at the door of his own father, Indra. Indra refused to entertain because it was this crow which had harmed Sita. So he thought he will find some asylum in his own father. His father was no different. So he thought his father will support him in this moment, but Indra was more concerned about his position and power and he did not want anything to happen to his position. So he had to relinquish the responsibility of protecting his son to his own. So this boy went knocking the door of every possible deity. Trin lokan samparikramya tameva sharanam gataha. It went and came back to the same place where it started. Vedanta Deshika, the polymath of the 13th century, states, Patti mudalam avatril padiyanakku koodamal yettisayum ulannodi ilaithu vilum kagam pol. Ilaithu, that which got fatigued. Vilum kagam, the one that sought asylum, that particular crow. Well, this is something that you must have heard. Who is this crow? No, don't tell me it's an Indian crow. That is understandable. Tell me who is this crow? You're wearing your masks, I'm aware, but you can still talk. Indra's son. Indra's son. Who is Indra's son? Who is Indra's son? Jayanta. Very good. So Indra's son is Jayanta. Correct? So this crow is Jayanta. Now, I will tell you how important Srimad Ramayanam is. In Srimad Ramayanam, Valmiki says, this is the son of Indra, the crow. He doesn't say this is Jayanta. Why do we state it is Jayanta? Because we have heard elsewhere that Jayanta was the son of Indra. So here it is mentioned the crow was the son of Indra. We have heard elsewhere that Jayanta is the son of Indra. So Jayanta must be the crow, is our conclusion. First of all, our assumption that Indra was a part of the family planning program is wrong. Why should he stop only with one child? He could have had many children. One. Second, Ramayanam doesn't mention that this crow was Jayanta. So Vedanta Deshika, in his commentary to Stotra Ratnam, which is called Stotra Ratna Bhashyam, he says, Na ayamapi Jayantaha. This is not Jayanta. Why? Because Valmiki's Ramayanam doesn't mention it is Jayanta. So Ramayanam is so important, so much so that even if another Purana states that this is Jayanta, we should not concur that this is Jayanta, this is only a crow. This is called Mukhya Pramanam. Well, another example. When Ravana comes in the form of a sannyasi, a parivrajaka, and wants to abduct Sita. We must have heard that Sita went inside the hermitage. She came with a bowl of fruits to offer to the sannyasi. That is when he reveals his original form and abducts Sita, holding her thighs in one of his hands and the braid of hair that she had in the other. This is how Valmiki describes. This is how we understand, and then she's taken to Lanka, Rama goes there, fights, and after the war is all done, he brings her back. There are certain versions that talk about a Maya Sita. I hope you must have heard of these versions, because the other versions of Ramayana are more popular than the Ramayana version itself. So you must have heard that when Sita went inside the hermitage, a Maya Sita appeared, and Agni Bhagavan consumed the original Sita, gave this replica of Sita, the Maya Sita, and she was the one who was kidnapped. And later when Rama asked her to go undergo the Agni Pariksha, the Sita replica, dummy Sita went into the fire and the original Sita came out. You must have heard of this version. This is not there in original Ramayana. So, Acharya state whatever is mentioned in Ramayanam is Mukhya Pramanam. So, Ramayanam has been accorded that status. So, what you're going to listen from day 1 till day 9 is one of the most authentic, respected, never doubted scripture called as Srimad Ramayanam. Now, we often have two categories of scriptures. One is Itihasa and the other one is Purana. Itihasam is 2 in number, which is Srimad Ramayanam and Sri Mahabharatam. Puranas are 18 in number. Now they have become 108 or 118, I don't know. But primarily 18 in number. What is the difference? Itihasa iti Itihasam. As it happened, it has been reported. That is Itihasa. Puranam is Pura api Navam Puranam. That which has happened before, but has been presented to us in a very contemporary fashion. So for example, if there is an incident which is happening, the person who writes, reports it from the ground. So direct report, that is Ramayanam and Mahabharatam. Whereas if an incident has happened, person A who has seen it tells this or narrates this to person B. Person B narrates this to person C. C narrates it to D. D narrates it to E. F will ask E, please narrate what all happened then. Then this person E will tell what he has heard from D, who has heard from C, who has heard from B, who has heard from A. This is Purana. That is why, let us take Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana, one of the most popular Puranas in the 18 Puranas, which is called Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana. The 7th canto is called Saptama Skandam, where you get to understand Nrisimhavataram. But if a person is falling short of time, they will immediately start with Hiranyakashipu. There was a king called Hiranyakashipu. He had a son who was extremely devout to the Lord, who was called Prahlada. This is how Nrisimhavataram will begin. But in Bhagavatam, it doesn't begin that way. Abhimanyu's son, Parikshit, upon understanding that he was to die at the hands of a poisonous snake called Takshaka, sits on the banks of a holy river. That is when a boy of tender limbs, lotus-like feet, of 16 years of age, called Shuka, the son of Vedavyasa, comes and starts narrating the pastimes of the Lord. This is how it begins. So Parikshit questions Shuka and Shuka gives his answers. Now the question asked by Parikshit is, Samav Priya Suhrid Brahman Lokanam Abhayankaraha. It is said, O dear Muni, that the Lord is impartial. He doesn't treat one is superior to the other. In that case, if the Lord is impartial, why should he be showering love on Prahlada and on the other side ripping open Hiranyakashipu? If he was impartial, he should be able to correct both of them. Why is he showering love on one and why is he showing his anger on the other? Was his question. What should Shuka reply? I will tell you what happened in Nrisimhavataram. He doesn't state. You know what he states? The same question that you had asked was asked by Yudhishthira, your ancestor, while he performed Rajasuya Yajnam and Krishna cut his head, Sishupala's head. So the same question that you had asked, even your ancestor had asked Narada Maharishi. I don't know how many of you can associate this incident with Woodward's gripe water. If a child cries, they will not give Woodward's gripe water. They will immediately say, when your mother used to be a child, she also used to cry. Then that mother's mother will come. Beauty is everyone in that house has managed to survive. That's the moral of that advertisement. Nevertheless, so here he will say that Narada answered this question because the same question was asked by somebody else. So this is how Puranam goes. So the advantage of Puranam is it has been authenticated by so many people. The disadvantage is because it has been narration 1, narration 2, narration 3, there are chances of aberrations and later inclusions which an Itihasa will not have because it's a direct report. So Itihasam is 2 in number, which is Srimad Ramayanam and Sri Mahabharatam. Amongst these two, you have degrees of comparison in English, right? When there is only one, it is positive. When there is more than one, which is 2 in number, it becomes comparative. More than 2, it becomes superlative. So when there are 2 books, the question will be, which of these 2 is better? Not as if we are going to read any of them after listening to the answer. But we would still love to compare, right? So here the question is, amongst these 2, which is more authentic? Shirairendavaliin Yetrathal Srimad Ramayanathin Perumai Sollitru. So Itihasa Sreshtamana Srimad Ramayanathal. Amongst these 2, amongst Ramayanam and Mahabharatam, Ramayana is accorded the better position. So we have to witness the beauty of Srimad Ramayanam in the days to come. Now, the moment I say Valmiki has written as he saw. So when did he start writing? You have to tell me something. See, that there is a huge difference between having a music concert and a discourse. Music concert, the Vidwan or the Vidushi is so much into that Nadam that they will close their eyes and they will have a good rapport with the violinist, the Mridangam. So they will be in their own world and intermittently you will have to give them an applause. Right? So the moment the Neravel is done and the last Korvai, the Tirmanam is done, you can give an applause. This is how music concerts work. I'm very sorry your discourse doesn't work that way. I'll keep asking you questions because the lunch hour is just over. So I want my audience to be awake. So I'll keep asking this question. When did he start writing Ramayanam? Uttarakandam. Excellent. He wrote. When is a big question, right? Now let us trace the chronology of Ramayanam. Rama was born. At the age of 12, Rama was married to Sita, who was at the age of 6. Well, then for another period set of 12 years, Rama and Sita managed to live happily in Ayodhya. So Rama was 24, Sita was 18. Rama was to enter his 25th year, just about to enter. That is when the entire fiasco of asking him to go to the forest happened. So he was sent on an exile for 14 years then. So at the beginning of 25th year, he went into the forest. And the moment he returned from Lanka, after coronating Vibheeshana as the next king with Sita and Hanuman, he was now beginning his 39th year. Sita was 32 and 33, between 32 and 33. Then after Pattabhishekam, they lived happily for 2 years happily in Ayodhya. So Rama was 41, Sita was 35. That is when she was pregnant. This is how Uttarakandam begins. And at that point in time, probably in her first trimester, that is when Sita happens to tell her husband, when he asks, what will make you happy in this gestation? She tells that my children should grow up in a very, very humble environment, bereft of comforts, like how we were living happily in the forest for the first 13 years. It was at that point in time, one of the spies to the kingdom, called as Bhadra, comes and informs Rama about what he heard from different sections of the people. And that is when Rama, in order to cleanse himself of any kind of blot that may fall on his kingdom, he says, okay, let me take this hard decision of sending the pregnant wife of mine to the forest. He calls his dear brother Lakshmana and asks him to drop Sita into the woods very close to the flowing waters of river Tamasa by Valmiki's ashramam. Though Lakshmana was initially reluctant, he says, okay, let me follow the orders of my brother, and leaves Sita on the banks of river Tamasa. Now Sita initially did not know. She thought she has come to the forest. Rama has sent so that she could stay in the resort for a week or so and come back. Then later she realizes that he has banished her from the kingdom. She immediately tells Lakshmana, go and ask your brother if he keeps telling with all pride that he has been a recipient of Vasishtha's knowledge. I have graduated from Vasishtha's university, similar to the Ivy League here. So I have graduated from Vasishtha's university. Go ask your brother if to banish one's wife who's pregnant into the forest is what Vasishtha has taught him. Go and ask him that. As soon as he leaves, Sita, there is a beautiful composition of a great freedom fighter poet called as Subramanya Bharati. Dik teri yaad kaatil unnai tedi tedi ilaite ne dik teri yaad kaatil. She was in a similar state. She was clueless as to which direction she should go. That is when she saw a hermitage on the other side. And that hermitage was that of a great rishi whom she had visited along with her husband in their sojourn in that forest. His name was Valmiki. He was one of the rarest rishis in those days, who was a dacoit turned rishi. So she went into the hermitage. Valmiki was able to recognize Sita. His Kainkarya Paras were not able to recognize. The moment she entered this hermitage, Valmiki welcomed her with open arms and understood what had transpired between her and Rama. And he said, do not worry, Sita, till you're here. Don't worry, I am like your brother, a fatherly figure. I will take care of all your needs. Why? Because earlier he was a dacoit who was of this habit of keeping the passers-by in the forest, and he used to take all their possessions and used to fend his family. That is when one day Narada Maharishi's beautiful golden veena was caught. It was called Mahati. And Narada said, see, you're accruing a lot of sins by taking away the possessions of others. And you will accrue a lot of sins. Who is going to share those sins from you? He said, no, my family will partake those sins. Go ask your family. The family member said, we will take share in the gold. Why will we take share in the papam? That is when this dacoit was enlightened and he came back to Narada. And Narada is said to have told him, what do you see in front of you? I see a beautiful tree, a vriksham, a padapa, which is also called a mara. Padapa, a tree is called padapa because padena pibati iti padapa. The one that drinks through its roots is called padapa, vriksham, and so on. I see a beautiful tree in front of me. Well, it is called Mara. Keep repeating the same name while you're meditating on the Supreme. And he started repeating Mara, 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 Mara. And he had this Ramanam that he was repeating. And as he was meditating, like a log of wood, a piece of wood, unmoved, termites started building a hill upon him. The ant hill which was built upon him was called Valmikam. That is when Narada Maharishi, Brahma appears and sprinkles some waters of Varuna Deva on him. And then the ant hill crumbles and breaks, and then arises a person with great resplendence. Since he arose from Valmikam, from that day, that moment onwards, he was called Valmiki. In Taitriyam, which is a part of Yajurveda, you may be wondering, he has been giving so many bits and pieces of information, how do we stitch it together? Leave that job to me, I'll stitch. So, in Yajurveda, in Krishna Yajurveda, in Taitriyam, there is a passage which states, Shrutoho Janma, this particular Valmikam, the anthill, Vedam states, are the years of Mother Earth. So if Mother Earth has to hear, if she wishes to understand what's happening atop her, over her, she hears them through the anthills. So it is called Valmikam. Since he arose from Valmikam, he is called Valmiki. Since he arose from Mother Earth, he is regarded as Mother Earth's son. Valmiki is treated like the son of Mother Earth. Similarly, a great king of the Nepal region was largely called as Mithila Desham, Videha Desham, with its capital as Mithila Nagari. So this king called Siradhwaja, he performed a Putrakameshti Yajnam, at the end of which the farmers requested that why don't you plow the land, till the land, and prove how much of love you have for farmers like us. And as he started plowing, the tip of that plow is called as tasi in Sanskritam. So the tasi was caught to a small casket, and as the king went closer to the casket, he saw a live little young girl, baby, in the casket. Nobody was claiming that girl at all. So the farmer said, she must be orphaned by her own children. Why don't you take this child up as the very gift of God, and why don't you nurture her? This child, which was taken by Siradhwaja, was called Sita because she arose from the tip of the plow, which is called tasi. So when the noun comes from a verb, you'll have to reverse that word. So tasi becomes Sita. So she was called Sita. Since she was found on Mother Earth, she is regarded as the daughter of Mother Earth. Regarded. Many kritis sing praise of Sita as the daughter of Mother Earth. Bhumi janayakam bhukti mukti dayakam nama kirtana tarakam naravaragadamagikam ramachandram bhavayami raghukula tilakam. Bhumi ja, the daughter of Mother Earth. Ravi Shashi Kuja Buddha Guru Shukra Shanaishchara Rahu Ketu Netaram Rajakumaram Ramam Pavana Japtam Avanija Manoharam Bhajare Re Manasa Avanija Manoharam. Avani means Bhumi. Ja means daughter. Avanija Manoharam, the one who is the beloved of Sita, who is the daughter of Mother Earth. Kshitija Ramanam Chintaye Shri Ramam Bhava Taranam Kshitija. Kshiti means Bhumi. Ja means daughter. Sita is called Kshitija, Bhumija, Avanija. So she is treated as the daughter of Mother Earth. Valmiki is treated as the son of Mother Earth. Rama asked Lakshmana to drop Sita by the banks of river Tamasa closer to the ashramam of Valmiki because she is pregnant. For her delivery, she may wish to go to the house of her father or brother. So she was sent there. Now, the moment Sita entered the ashramam, we will all be wondering, the people who were serving Valmiki in the ashramam would have taken selfies with Sita. She's Sita, Rama Patni, we'll take selfie. Nobody had any general knowledge then. They didn't know that this was Rama Patni. So they thought she must be some princess, some queen. They were people who were serving Valmiki selflessly. So it didn't matter to them if she was an aristocrat, a Kshatriya Kulam, and nothing of that. When Valmiki said, attend to her needs, they thought our Guru Vakyam is more important, and started attending to her needs. She did not reveal her name. She called her name some Maithili Janaki. Many women are called Maithili and Janaki. Even from Crazy Mohan's drama, they are called Maithili and Janaki. So they started attending to her. She was given a separate room, a suite. And Valmiki started thinking. All this while, now Sita is at the age of 35. So Valmiki must have lived over those many years. So he was thinking all this while that in this present world, if there is one person who was a repository of all auspicious attributes, it is Rama. But now, this moment, he thought that notion has to change, because a person whom I thought is a prefect will not end up sending his wife to the forest while she is pregnant, even without understanding what must have gone right or wrong. So he was extremely doubtful. This cannot be Rama. I thought Rama is Mr. Perfect. This cannot be the situation. While he was doubtful as to why this had happened, that is when Ramayanam begins. He was doubting if this Rama is the one who is a repository of all these 16 auspicious attributes. That is when the first shlokam of Ramayana commences. See, you will have to connect the first shlokam of Balakandam with Uttarakandam and see where it has to begin. Tapaswadhyaya niratam tapasvi vadvidambaram naradam paripaprachya valmikir munipungavam. This is the first shloka of Srimad Ramayanam. Tapaswadhyaya niratam tapasvi vagvidambaram. So if you see, I'm not getting into the intricacies of Sanskritam as a language. There are many words which are in Dvitiya Vibhakti. Tapaswadhyaya niratam, vagvidambaram, munipungavam. These are all in the Dvitiya Vibhakti. So this has to indicate one person. Then there is one word which is not in Dvitiya Vibhakti, which is tapasvi. That has to indicate the other person. So tapasvi, who is Valmiki, to his hermitage came Narada Maharshi on his own. Who is Narada Maharshi? Tapaswadhyaya niratam. The one who is adept in tapas. What is tapaha? Tapaha alochane dhatu. The one who can internalize and realize and think, contemplate is called tapaha. So generally, these days, if you see some elderly person, a person who is extremely well read, the parents will immediately tell their children, take his blessings, go fall at his feet. See, of course age doesn't matter in Sanātana Dharma. Prahlada can teach much more than what many Maharshis could teach. But today in Kali Yugam, remember that age or education alone cannot help one's blessings fructify. For example, if somebody falls at my feet, I say you have to best wishes, hope whatever exams you are pursuing, may you pass successfully. They won't pass. I'll tell you why. Because we do not have the tapas in us. See, only if you contemplate and internalize, the great sage of Kanchi, Paramacharya, Chandrasekharendra Saraswati, who was called Mahapriyava, who lived in the last 100 years. Maybe a Vedanta Deshika, maybe a Bhagavad Ramanuja. Those of them who gave so much of their life for tapas, only then will every word that you utter become a reality. Just by age. That is because you were produced 50 years before. So your age cannot determine your words turning into reality. It may turn the contrary also. So there are chances. So tapas is very important. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahma, who has been created, wonders what he should be doing then. That is when there is a shlokam in Srimad Bhagavatam which states, Shodashoksharaha. So the 16th letter and the 21st letter have to be combined is the answer. So the 16th letter is Ta. The 21st is Pa. So tapaha alochane dhatu. Brahma starts performing tapas. Now that word tapas is accorded to Brahma's son, who is Narada. Tapas swadhyaya niratam. Swadhyaya. Practice. Internalize what you are studying. Tapas swadhyaya niratam. The one who was a storehouse of tapas and swadhyayam. Tapasvi Vagvidam Varam. Vagvidam Varam. The one who's adept in eloquence. You should know how to manage that situation. You should end up turning even a negative scenario into a very, very positive one. That is the role of a speaker. Imagine the entire lecture was held outside and we are having thunderstorms and it starts pouring. Ayyo, mara peyyarde. No. Varuna Bhagavan is blessing us. This is how we should transform even a negative like event into a positive event. When you visit some house, imagine the food that they serve is not very tasty. Just giving you a scenario. In that case, you should never say your food is bad. You should say the water that you gave is extremely tasty. Where do you get this water from? Mississippi or Missouri? You should ask. So, this is how you should turn a negative event into a positive event. At the end of my lecture, people will ask, I will expect things like, okay, the lecture was good. Kurta nanna irundhathu. That means the lecture was not good. So, they are trying to Vagvidambaram Naradam Paripapracha Naram Dadati Iti Naradaha. The one who bestows knowledge on to the person who is interested in understanding is called Narada. Varanarada Narayana Smarana Nandanubhava Mugala Varanarada, says Saint Tyagaraja. Naradam Paripapracha. Paripapracha means ask questions only if you have had the patience to understanding the situation before. It's very important. See, in this current world, there are a handful, I can't even say if there are a handful, there is only probably one civilization that openly says questioning is okay. If in Sanātana Dharma, the art of questioning was not motivated, was not encouraged, we wouldn't be having so many scriptures at all. If Maitreya had not questioned and if Parashara Maharshi had not answered, we wouldn't be enjoying the compilation which is called Vishnu Puranam today. If Parikshit had not asked questions and Shuka Brahma had not given answers, we wouldn't be enjoying Srimad Bhagavatam. If Vaishampayana had not answered and Janamejaya not questioned, we wouldn't be having Mahabharatam. If Arjuna had not questioned and Krishna had not given answers, we wouldn't be having Bhagavad Gita. If we have Thiruvaimuri, which is called Dravida Vedam today, it is because Madhura Kavi Alvar asked, Settatting Baichil, Siriyadu Virandal, Yattai Tinnu Enge Kidakkum, for which Nammalvar answered, Adu Attai Tinnu Ange Kidakkum. So, Sanātana Dharma, Vedic civilization, has just not encouraged the art of questioning, but it has also proven that only through questioning can you seek answers. Nevertheless, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Krishna, was related to Arjuna. Krishna and Arjuna were related. How Arjuna's mother, Kunti, and Krishna's father, Vasudeva, were siblings. So, for Krishna, Arjuna was Attai's son, aunt's son. And that is why Krishna's sister was married to Arjuna. They were related of the same age, roughly. So, in the middle of the battlefield, when he asks questions, you would be expecting the teacher who's answering questions to be at a higher pedestal. No. One of the great saints of the last century, he was referred to as Tirukudandai Andavan. He was a great saint, and he had a witty form of rendering discourses. He used to state that Arjuna's footwear used to be scratching the shoulders of Krishna. So there is no respect, there is disrespect. So he keeps on asking questions, to which Krishna keeps answering. But in the middle, Krishna tells, hey Arjuna, you are extremely talented in putting the right questions to me. But trust me, if you want to seek answers to questions henceforth, go to the right Acharya, serve him selflessly, relentlessly, so much so that one day, extremely happy with the services that you have rendered, the teacher will ask, if you have any questions, please do ask. And at that point in time, with absolute humility, ask questions and you will get that answer. Tad vidhiv pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninaha tattvadarshinaha. So, Krishna says, questioning is not wrong, but don't ask questioning even without having any foundation of what that book you are going to ask questions from. And ask questions in such a way that you want those answers imprinted in your mind rather than testing the person whom you are questioning. See, we ultimately want to prove that we are better intellectuals than Valmiki and Vyasa. This is a futile exercise. So many people will come up to me and say, sir, I have one thing which is niggling me, it is troubling me. What is troubling you? See, Valmiki has not mentioned much about Lakshmana's wife Urmila. If he has not mentioned, leave it. Why should we be bothered so much? See, ultimately they want to find a fault with Valmiki's Ramayana. Sir, you are talking about the sacrifices that Rama and Sita had. What about Urmila? How she would have survived without Lakshmana for 14 years? She was happy. Let us not trouble such people. Why should we dig what is already being buried and cremated? So the point is, questioning is right, but initially have this art of acquiring knowledge. Because the moment you start acquiring knowledge, most of the questions that may arise will already be answered. And after that, you do swadhyayam, think and think and think. You will get answers. Despite that, if you don't get answers, ask questions. So, Naradam paripapracha. So, this paripapracha means questioning after contemplating. Valmikir Muni Pungavam, the lion, the bull amongst all Munis had arrived, and Valmiki was to ask. What were the questions? Now, Narada says, Valmiki, if you have any doubts, please do ask. Immediately, there is one long question that he asks. The question goes like this. Konvasmin sampratam loke gunavan kascha viryavan dharmajñascha kritajñascha satyavakyo dridhavratah charitrena cha ko yuktah sarvabhuteshu kohitah vidwan kahka samarthascha kaschaika priyadarshanaha atmavan ko jitakrodaha dhyudiman ko anasuyagah Kasya bibhyati devascha jataroshasya sanyuge. Who is the one who has got all these 16 qualities in him? Why should Valmiki ask? Because till then he was thinking that Rama was the one who had all these 16 attributes. The moment he saw that Rama had vanquished his pregnant wife to Sita in the middle of the forest, he thought Rama must not be the repository of auspicious attributes. So he asks, Kon basmin sampratam loke gunavan. Sampratam loke, hey Narada Maharshi, in the present world, sampratam loke, who has got these 16 attributes? Gunam. Gunam means attribute. What is the first gunam out of the 16 gunams? Gunavan. You are able to see the small problem here. in Tamil, there is a word to refer to the provision items. It's called Maligai Saman. Now the mother has to buy some provisions every month. So she asks her son to take down the list. So it is called Maligai Saman, provisions list. 1, the boy puts 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. He tells, mother, tell me what you want. 1, Maligai Saman. No, you tell me what do you want in that. No, Maligai Saman. So if I go to the shop and say, Maligai Saman, you tell me what you want. Maligai Saman. 16 gunas. What is the first gunam? Gunavan. How is it possible? Then that gunam should have a different meaning. In Sanskritam, gunam means multiplication. Remember this. Chaturadhika shatam ashta gunam dva ayudascha Chaturadhika shatam ashta gunam. Arya Bhatiyam tells this. Chaturadhika shatam. Chatuhu 4. Adhika shatam. More than 100. 104. Ashta gunam. Multiply it with 8. 832. Dva shashti ayudascha. Dva shashti 62. Ayuda is 10,000. 62,000 plus 832, which is 62,832 divided by Dva Ayuda again. So you will have 20,000, which will give you 3.1416, the value of pi. So the value of pi in Arya Bhatiyam has this word gunam, which means multiplication. Gunam in Sanskritam also denotes that attribute in a person where, despite being in a very high status, the person is able to move with people of all genre, all strata in the society with equal ease. It's called Saushilyam. So Saushilyam, the attribute in the Lord, especially in Ramavataram, is referred to by the word guna. Konvasmin sampratam loke gunavan kascha viryavan. Who is the one who is adept with viram? Dharmajnascha, the one who is able to understand the dharmam of prapatti and bhakti. Kritajnascha, Kritajna. हिंदी, कुछ लोग इधर हिंदी बोलते हैं? हाँ जी. कृतज्ञ का मतलब क्या होता है हिंदी में? कृतज्ञ అంటే ఏమి చెప్పండి? Very good. Grateful. Gratitude is called kritajnata. So Kritagnya means grateful. What is the word in Sanskritam for ungrateful? Kritaghana. See, look at the word. Kritagnya is grateful. Kritaghana is ungrateful. You'll have to be very careful in listening or even uttering this word. So the question is, who in the world is a Gunavan, Viryavan and Kritagyavan, grateful? What is the answer for all these questions? You know the answer. Who is the one who has got all these 16 auspicious attributes? Rama. So how do we prove Rama is grateful? Tell me, how is he grateful? How do we prove Rama is grateful? Give me one incident that he was grateful. He was grateful to Hanuman for what?
Going and finding Sita and coming back.
Yeah, and so what was the sign? What did he bless Hanuman with? Very good. Apara para avara parikha parivrita parapura parasata davadaha najava napava nabhava kavivara parishwanga bhavita sarvaswadana. He embraced Hanuman. Very good. One incident. You have an incident. Jatayu-Moksham. See, Jatayu, a scavenger, a vulture, tried protecting Sita, but he failed. And that is when Rama says, Gachalokan anuttaman, may you get moksham. So that was a sign of gratitude. Very good. I will give you one incident, what my Acharya used to state. Same, getting back to the Kakasura Vrittantam. So, the crow, it had knowingly, not unknowingly, knowingly, the crow with its sharp beaks attacked Sita, physically assaulted Sita, and blood started oozing. Ravana did no such harm. He just kidnapped her. He took her to Lanka, which is in crisis. So, the moment he took her to Lanka, every day he used to send her one silk sari with beautiful jewelry. Silk sari with, in Kanchipuram lingo, it's called rettai pettu, with Hamsam border. You may be wondering, how do you know it is Hamsam border? Because Vedanta Deshika mentions Taddakulanka Murtau Tanmanjira in Hamsa Sandesham. While she was kidnapped, she had Hamsa border in her sari, it seems. So they are getting to the specifics. In those days, I'm sure, for the kidnapped children, there will be one small portion in the news accorded. Kana Villai. They have to tell what dress that the child was wearing while he was kidnapped. So here Vedanta Deshika states she was wearing a silk sari with Hamsam border. It was Korvai. Now, he used to present a silk sari to Sita and used to coax her to marry him. And Sita refused. But Ravana, despite being so respectful to Sita, he lost his life. Whereas the crow which had physically assaulted Sita just lost one eye, not its life. Why? Look at the incident. When the crow came, Rama released the astram, and finally the crow surrendered at the feet of Rama, and that too initially did not even bow its head down. It kept its foot on Rama's foot, and that is when Sita pushes the crow back and puts its head down in such a way that Rama feels that the crow is seeking asylum at his feet. Then, in order to tell the world that if you commit a mistake, you need to be accorded a punishment, he takes one of its eyes. That is why in Sanskritam literature it is called Kakakshi Godakanyayam, which means literature believes that crows have only one eye. They have two sockets but only one eye. That is why the crow will never look at you like this. It will either turn this way or this way. So the moment it turns that side, the eyes balls keep juggling between the two sockets. Is a belief in the literature. Now don't come and prove that it has got two eyes. I said this is a belief in the literature. Poets have been given the license to exaggerate things. So this crow was not killed. At that point in time, you know what Valmiki does? He says that the crow's life was spared. By whom? By Rama. So he says, Kakutstha, Vadharham api Kakutstha Kripaya Paryapalayad. Vadharham api. That which had to be killed but was not killed was spared of its mistakes. By whom? By Rama. There the word used by Valmiki is Vadharham api Kakutstha Kripaya Paryapalayat. Kakutstha did not kill it. Why should he use the word Kakutstha instead of Rama? Because in Rama's ancestors there was a king believed to be Mandhata. He was called by Indra to fight the demons because Indra could not single-handedly tackle the demon. So the moment the king went, he started fighting the demons. One day, the chariot upon which he was fighting had some breakdown problem and it had to go to the workshop. Without having the chariot, you cannot fight on a battlefield because you'll have to store your weapons somewhere. And you have to stand at a higher pedestal to fight the demon who is at that height. So when the chariot was not available, Indra transformed himself into a bull. And he said, Mandhata, why don't you stand atop me and fight the demon? So the bull, the tall bull, has a huge hump. So the king stood atop the bull and atop its hump and fought the demon. And of course he was victorious and the demon was vanquished in the battle. Since this king stood on the top of the hump, a hump in Sanskritam is called kaku. Since he stationed himself above the kaku, he was called Kakutstha. Since Rama came in the lineage of Kakutstha, he is called Kakutstha. So, the moment Rama realized it was Indra's son, he thought, one of my ancestors is grateful to Indra because at the most needed hour, Indra transformed himself into a bull. So my ancestor is grateful, indebted to Indra. Today, me, Rama, who's coming in the lineage of Kakutstha, if I kill Indra's son, then that gratitude will go away. So I should not kill the son of Indra, I should just minimally punish him. Since he thought gratitude is such a great virtue and a quality, he did not kill Indra's son. Why? Because he had to be grateful to Kakutstha. That is why Valmiki at that juncture says, Vadharhamapi Kakutstha kripaya paryapalayat. So the question asked by Valmiki was, Kritagnyata, Kritagyavan, the one who is grateful. So all these 16 attributes, see, for each attribute I have to spend 1 hour. I don't have that luxury. In 9 days I have to cover 19,000 shlokas. So assuming that you are all sarvajñas and you will all know what is the meaning of the 16 attributes, I am leaving it here. Now, after this question, what was the expectation of Valmiki? That there will be some other person. Because the person whom he thought Rama was, the repository of 16 auspicious attributes, was not one. Because he has deserted his wife. Now Narada had to give an answer. See, I don't know how many of you here, elderly people here, may be able to relate to this. In school days, if the teacher was to say that this is the portion that I am going to cover tomorrow, to impress upon the teacher, some of the students will read those lessons the previous day and go. Because if the teacher asks the questions, you can immediately raise your hand and answer. So that is, you will raise your hand with all that enthusiasm when you know the answer beforehand. So while the question started, Kon basmin sampratam loke gunavan kascha viryavan. The moment he started asking, Narada should have gauged that the answer is Rama. The moment Valmiki finishes all the 16 auspicious attributes, you know what Narada says? Wait, I'll just tell you. He swallows, he drinks a part of his saliva and then says, okay, now I'll give you an answer. Now again the commentator asks, if Narada had known that the answer was Rama, why should he not tell the answer immediately? Why should he take that little time, swallow and then say, I will tell Rama? For this the commentator says, let us go to a house. Somebody has invited, some Mahan Baba has invited us to his house. And they have prepared some sweet. You can take whichever sweet is of your state. Let us begin with Kerala. Sweet of Kerala, Chakka variety. I'll add a Pradanam. Then we'll go to Andhra or Telangana. Putarekulu is your gateway to Vaikuntham. It has so much of ghee in it. So you can think of Akkara Vadishan, or you can think of Mysore Pak, Puran Poli of Maharashtra. Gujarat, we don't have to go for a sweet. All the dishes are sweet. So any sweet you take. Suppose a person has made that sweet and is bringing that sweet closer to you. Even before you taste and they ask, how is it? It's excellent. You have not even tasted the sweet, but you're telling it is excellent. What will the person infer? That means you're afraid of that person. Then only even before tasting you'll say it is very good. Imagine the person has given that sweet. I put it inside the mouth. The moment it touches my tongue, I say it is good. It means it is actually not good. Because I have not even tasted that, relished that sweet. Instead, I am given that sweet, I put it into my mouth. Excellent. So only when I relish taste will I take that little time. Though Narada knew the answer to the question was Rama, he took that little time because he wanted to relish the nama of Rama first. And then he said, Ikshvaku Vamsha Prabhavaha Ramo Nama Janaishrutaha. The same Rama who has been loved by people is the answer to the question of yours. Why did Valmiki ask this question? Because he had concluded that Rama is not the person. Now Narada comes and says, no, it is Rama only. Again Valmiki was a bit confused. He went to the forest. While he had left to the forest along with his student Bharadwaja, that day apparently as he was looking to the branch of one of the trees, he saw a pair of birds in the love making. So he saw the male bird and the female bird, and as he was relishing nature in its fullest, that is when one of the birds was killed and it fell on the ground. the female bird started lamenting over the death of the male bird. The moment he saw this drishyam, the sight, he was not able to withstand the sorrow that was emanating from him. He thought, is this right for someone to kill one of the birds, that too when they are in the process of love making? And that is when he sees the hunter who had killed coming walking with that great pride in him. The moment that sorrow, shokam, sorrow, as it started traveling through his passage, his the throat, that shokam turned into letters. And those letters rearranged, and as he opened his mouth and uttered, that shokam became a shlokam. Shokaha, shlokatvam agataha. And that is when he cursed, looking at the hunter. Manishada yat pratishthantvam agama shashvati samaha yat krauncha mitunad ekam avadhihi kamamohitam. The moment he uttered this curse, he came back to his ashramam and sat. Then he thought, how can a rishi like him turn angry all of a sudden? He should have controlled Kamo, Ka Rishi, Manyu Ka Rishi, August 1st, 11th, it is coming, right? Kamo, Ka Rishi, Manyu Ka Rishi. On the day of Yajurupa Karma, you have to repeat 1008 times. I have won over anger, I have won over pleasure, kamam, kamo, karishit, manyuha karishit. And imagine when you are uttering this, you are asking someone, why isn't he come? Kamo, karishit, manyuha karishit, have you won over anger? So when Valmiki uttered this, he thought, I shouldn't have cursed that person. Then while he is wondering what has really happened, that is when Narada's father, Brahma, appears there. He says, why are you so perplexed, Valmiki? See, I have cursed that person I shouldn't have done. Where did you curse? I said, Ma Nishada, oh you hunter, Yat Pratishtan, Tvam Magama Shashvati Samaha, you have crossed all the barriers, all those levels which have been put for a great person to live in this world. Yat Krauncha Mitunad Ekam, like how you have separated one of the birds. Avadhihi kamamohitam, you too shall be separated from your consort. This is your uttering, right? Isn't this a curse, Brahmaji? Brahma said, no, this is not a curse. You have not understood Sanskritam properly. Ma means Mahalakshmi. Nishada means the one who stays close to Mahalakshmi. Ma Nishada means Mahavishnu. Yat pratishtham tvam agama shashvati samaha. As you are born on this earth out of great compassion, yat krauncha mitunad ekam, like how you were separated from your consort while you were born as a human who's Sita, avadhihi kamamohitam, that particular scripture that talks about your separation shall be a great solace to the world. You have all actually given a blessing, Valmiki. Valmiki then realized, oh, I didn't realize this was a blessing. What should I do now? See, Rama is now 41. His wife is in your ashramam. You start writing down the biography of Rama. Now Valmiki says, see, how will I know how he was born, where he was educated, what he ate, how did he walk, what was his height? I won't know any of these details. That is when Brahma said, don't worry, all this has been recorded in the CCTV camera. You open your palm, you can see hastam amalakam gata, like a gooseberry that can be seen very much on the palm of a person. You can see what all has happened. Rahasyam cha prakasham cha, whatever is popular in this world can also be seen. Rahasyam cha, what has transpired just between the two will also be known to you. You can see. As you see, you have to start writing. In what format should I write? Now, hey Valmiki, I introduce you to one pattern in this world which is called poetry. Remember, in Sanātana Dharma, Valmiki's Ramayanam is called Adi Kavyam, the first poetry to come in this world. Even before the paradise lost and paradise gained, it was the first poetry ever born. There are 18 types of meters used in Valmiki's Ramayanam. The most prominent meter is Anushtup Chandas. 32 letters will be found in most of the shlokas. It is called Anushtup Chandaha. So this is how your kavyam should be born. And he starts writing. Now where does Ramayanam, how does he begin Ramayanam? There was a great king called Dasharatha. Dasharatha was a king who was adept in riding his chariot possibly in all the 10 directions. You have got north, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. Probably he could even go in the z-axis and the minus z-axis. 8 plus 2, 10. Dasharatha. Now you may be wondering, how can a person go in the z-axis or minus z-axis? Right? Probably he was driving at a much faster pace than most other people who could drive. So when you drive beyond a certain speed, people who are going in the car will also have a flight effect. So he had Dasharatha. So Dasharatha, he was called Dharmaraja, and he had many wives. See, this problem of many wives, many children, all this will be there in our Puranas. Many of them will come up to me and they will have a doubt. Sir, why did he marry so many people? What can I do? He did not ask my permission. So you have to take things as they come in Srimad Ramayanam and Sri Mahabharatam. He had many wives. Well, how many were they? 3. This is what we know. But in Ayodhya Kandam, it is said that over 260 wives of his were crying when Sita had to go to the forest. So primarily we know only 3. Now don't ask me what are the names of the 260. That is irrelevant to us. Now, Dasharatha had a daughter. Her name was Shanta. The commentary called as Govindarajiyam, while deciphering the shlokas in Balakandam, does make a mention of it. So she was called Shanta. She was given in adoption to a king called as Romapada of Vangadesham. Vangadesham is current West Bengal and Bangladesh put together. So she was given in adoption to that king. That king nurtured and nourished that girl as his very own daughter. And at one point in time, this Shanta, at one point in time, Vangadesham did not get proper rains. So the astrologers and the priests in that particular region said that the only way this country can be bestowed of copious rainfall is when a Naishtika Brahmachari, a great Brahmachari, sets his foot into this kingdom. So with their encyclopedic knowledge, they got to know that there was a great son born to a rishi called Vibhandaka. See, the beauty of our scriptures is, as you keep listening, you should keep noting down the details. Because when somebody asks you outside, what is the name of the sage? So you have to remember, you will have to note it down. That is why I keep telling you, there is a difference between sitting for a kacheri, a concert and a discourse. At the end of it, I should supply question and answers to everybody. Should remember the names. Vibhandaka was the name of the rishi. He lived in the western Ghats of Kannada region, which is Karnataka. The place is today called Kigga. So this Vibhandaka Maharishi was bestowed with a son by the grace of God. This son had an abnormal growth on his scalp. This abnormal growth resembled the shringam. Shringam means the horn of a deer variety. In deer, there were many varieties and one species was called Rishyam category. So this Rishyam category had one horn, like how rhinoceros that you see, it had one horn. Since this boy had an abnormal growth that resembled the shringam of a Rishya, he was called Rishya Shringa. So this Rishya Shringa performed austerities atop a hill, a giri. Rishya Shringa Giri became Shringeri later. So this son of Vibhandaka called as Rishya Shringa was a brahmachari, and if he were to come to Vangadesham, there will be copious rainfall, they said. So this lady Shanta, she goes with different sweets from Bengal. Now you may be wondering, how do you know sweets were taken? This is mentioned in the Sanskritam commentary. What will be the sweets? They have not mentioned. We know. Champagiri, Shondesh, Roshugullo, Gure Roshugullo, Chana Payas. All this was taken from the Vangadesham to Kigga. And the moment he was attracted by the sweets, he started following her. The moment he set his foot in Vangadesham, there was copious rainfall. The Shanta was married to Rishyashringa. So, in other words, Dasharatha's daughter Shanta and Dasharatha's son-in-law Rishyashringa were great people. Now, Dasharatha was a great king. He had good ministers with him. Dirghadarshi Mahatejaha Paurajanapadah Priyaha Tasyam Puryam Ayodhyayam Vedavid Sarva Sangraha Yatha Manur Mahatejaha Lokasya Parirakshita Tatha Dasharatho Raja Lokasya Parirakshita, says Valmiki. Ramayanam is one of the scriptures that has been transcreated in most of the world languages. Even before a transcreated work such as Kamba Ramayanam could be born in Tamil, there was an earlier version of Ramayanam before Kamba Ramayanam in a language which was regional but not regional to India. That was the Javanese Ramayanam called as the Kakawin Ramayanam. So even if you go to the islands of Bali today, there is a beautiful dance called as the Kechak dance which is performed every day. Now, here there is a verse which comes from Kamba Ramayanam as to how the king was. Tai vokkum anbil tavam vokkum tavappaya pilsei vokkum munnindru voshal mari voikkum neeral noyokkum ennin marundu vokkum nunangu kelvi aaya pugudal arivu vokkum yavarkum annan. He was extremely adept. In those days, if there was a king, the king had to be an intellectual. The king had to be a great Veera because he was the one who had to go and defend his kingdom. He had to be a judge. Today we have separated all these powers, right? There is a separate army, there is a separate judiciary, and then there will be people who will take care of the administrative tasks. The same person who is ruling the country cannot go and fight. So he won't go and fight. So the king in those days had all the functions with him. He had to be intellectual, he had to be valorous, he had to be extremely good at decision making to be a judge. So all the powers vested in a king. And kings had good ministers, educated ministers in those days. Today it may seem like an oxymoron. Education and ministry don't go well together. But in those days it used to happen. Impossible things could also happen in those days. Nevertheless, Rishyashringa was invited to Ayodhya. Why? Because Dasharatha wanted to have sons now. Now don't feel that he was male chauvinist. All these things will come. He already had a girl. Now he wanted to have a son. Let us give some benefit of doubt to these kings. They will immediately say, you are running a campaign called Beti Bachao, Beti Padao. Why should he have only Beta? See, in Sanskritam there is a saying, Punnarakam Trayati iti putraha. The one who prevents his fathers and forefathers from going to a Narakam, a hell, called as Put, is called Putraha. Why is a son called Putra? Because by his birth, his forefathers won't go to that Narakam called Punnarakam Trayati iti putraha. On a lighter vein, one Acharya asked, why should the Putraha be called Putraha? Because the fathers and forefathers don't have to go to a hell called as Putra. Because they experience that hell after the son is born. So he is called Putraha. Nevertheless, now comes the question, why should Putri not be included? Because in grammar, Sanskritam grammar, if there is a word of the same category, but it has one extra matra, Putra, Putri, I go for that one extra second, right? So Putri becomes a subset of Putra. So wherever Putra is mentioned, Putri is also denoted. How? Dasharatha performed Putra Kama Ishti. So he had sons. What did Janaka perform? He too performed Putra Kama Ishti and he had a daughter. So he did not perform Putri Kama Ishti. He performed Putra Kama Ishti. So Putra becomes the superset for the subset Putri in Sanskrit grammar. Now he wanted to perform the Yajnam, but it is said in Shastram that the sins that the Praja has accrued will go to the king. So generally kings will be afflicted with many diseases, because when they take up for Pattabhishekam, the oath that they have to take is, I will not allow my Praja to perform any kind of wrong deeds. if they perform as a punishment of what they have performed, I will take up the papam, says Shastram. So kings did not survive for many years in those days. So Dasharatha, in order to get his papams annihilated, he had to perform a yajnam called as Ashwamedham. And it was performed for 1 year. Samvatsareti, for 1 year, Dasharatha performed Ashwamedham. For that 1 year, he has to sit by the Yagavatika. Then who will take care of the administration? He gave away the administrative powers to Vasishtha for 1 year. And he performed the yajnam. How was Ashwamedham performed? If you get into details, that horse, the sacrificial horse, is at the end of it sacrificed. So then there will be 3 golden needles drawn on the horse. To get into the details of Ashwamedham itself is a different lecture that is being brought together in Brahma Sutra Bhashyam. So 3 lines will be drawn. And the queen who desires the progeny has to sleep next to the dead horse for 1 night. And then you will have to pray to get good progeny. This was a custom for Ashwamedham. After Ashwamedham, there was a Ishti performed. Putra Kama Ishti. Ishti is a Shrauta Bhagam. So if you desire Putra Kama Ishti, it is performed as per Atharvana Vedam. And this was done based on Shukla Yajurvedam. Remember all these details. It is not found in Ramayanam. It is found in Ramayana's commentary called as Govindarajiyam. So after the Ashwamedham and Putra Kama Ishti, a Yajna Purusha had to arise. Now who is this Yajna Purusha? There goes a shlokam. Krishnam Raktam Baradharam Raktasyam Dundubhiswanam Snigdhadaryah Kshatanujamashrushra Pravaramurdhajam Shubhalakshana Sampannam Divyabharana Bhushitam Shailashringa Samutsedyam Driptashadula Vikramam. It is said a Yajna Purusha arose. Who is this Yajna Purusha? He was red hue. And he carried a golden pot with a silver lid. Krishna Jambudana Priyam. He had a golden pot with a Rajatasrajam. He had a silver lid on it. And then there was payasam in it. Why golden pot with a silver lid? Because this gold is aurum, AU. What is silver? Argentum, AG. Silver has the property to expel heat, to retain heat. That is why if you look at some of our ancestors, they will have food on silver plates because the heat of that food will stay on your plate. Whereas gold has the property to expel heat. That is why we wear gold jewelry. Your body heat will be expelled through the gold. Since the payasam had to be in a lukewarm condition, neither too hot nor neither too cold, it was a golden pot with a silver lid. Now this payasam emerged. Now the moment that payasam emerged, this payasam had to be distributed amongst the wives of Dasharatha. Principal wives, Kaushalya, Sumitra, Kaikeyi. And the other order is Kaushalya, Kaikeyi, Sumitra. Which order is correct? Some order, sir. You finish the lecture. Second one, which is Kaushalya, Kaikeyi, Sumitra, right? What is the other order? Kaushalya, Sumitra, Kaikeyi. The problem is not Kaushalya. The other two only we have a problem. Correct? Remember, Ramayanam itself doesn't come to the conclusion who is next. In certain places, Sumitra is referred to as Madhyamamba, the middle mother. In certain places, Kaikeyi is referred to as Madhyamamba. Okay. There is a great speaker in the Kannada tradition. Kannada matadavaru idare alli. Barnaji Govindacharyaru anta oba dodda pravachanakarta. He was one of the greatest speakers. He used to even ask a question. What is the order of the children? Rama, Bharata, Lakshmana, Shatrughna. But where is it mentioned that Lakshmana was born after Bharata? We say that Bharata was born on the day of Pushya Nakshatram. Next comes Aslesha Nakshatram, Lakshmana was born. But then he raises a question, who told you that this year Lakshmana could have been born in Aslesha Nakshatram? Next year Pushya Nakshatram Bharata could have been born. So there is a place in Ramayanam where Bharata falls at the feet of Lakshmana. If Bharata was elder to Lakshmana, it should have not happened. So he raises a question. So there are many debates, intellectual debates that happen based on Ramayanam. Now I won't confuse you any further. Here, this payasam emerged. Now, traditionally in our lectures, all our acharyas will say, Payasam vandudam, ada kudutalam, ada palginalam, kodanda porandudam. So the payasam was given, it was distributed, the queens consumed, as a result children were born. If you tell this way, your children will refuse to have payasam. If you drink payasam, you will get children in a day. Remember that Ramayanam does describe Rama's life history in detail. But it may not end up describing every event that you want it to describe. There is no place where Rama is mentioned to have brushed his teeth. So can we conclude that Rama did not brush his teeth at all? Certain details Valmiki will give it to the intellect of the readers to assume that you all know Rama would have brushed his teeth, he would have taken bath. Correct. Similarly, children were born the way children are born on earth. So what is this payasam? Payasam was like a herbal medical concoction. If they had certain ailments in their body, both the queen or the king, that was preventing them from getting pregnant. So this was a medical treatment concoction which was given to eradicate all that, and then they will have children. So all this will not be mentioned. They will say payasam was given, children were born. So we'll have to add all these intermediate steps to make it more logical. I am not sounding so logical because I want to force it to be logical. No, it is logical. So this payasam was distributed. Now there is a big question here. You have to listen to this carefully. How was the payasam distributed? I will tell about the shlokas. Kausalyayai narapatihi payasardham dadau tada. Payasardham. Ardham means how much? Half. Ardhaha? Ardhaha? That is padam. Padam means quarter. In Tamil Nadu, quarter has a different meaning. Ardhaha. What is ardhaha? Half. So very rarely in Sanskritam you will have one word appearing in two genders. Ardham is napumsakalingam. Ardhaha is pullingam. We can use ardhaha and ardham. When ardham means half or slightly less than half. 49.5 is ardham. 50 or slightly more than 50 is ardhaha. So, if a person is giving me food and I say Padi Kudungo, give me half, and that person is giving me that half, based on the quantity in those days, they will decide the lingam. Either it is ardham or ardhaha. So, payasardham, it was 49.5 or 49.9. This payasam, 50, close to 50%. Kausalyayai narapatihi, he gave it to Kausalya. Ardad ardham, half of that half, remaining half is 25%. Chapi sumitrayai naradhipaha, it was given to Sumitra. What is remaining? Another 25%. Kaikeyai chavasishtardham, half of that remaining portion, how much is it? 12.5 was given to Kaikeyi. Dadau putrartha karanat. Look at the words that Valmiki uses. He says, he gave this payasam to Kaikeyi, desiring a son. Why was the putra karanat not mentioned in Kausalya? Remember, despite being the eldest of the four sons, Rama goes to the forest, and after his going away only, Dasharatha passes away. And the son who performs the final rites for his father is Bharata. So, putrartha karanat, if a son has to live and has to be dutiful to his father or mother, he has to perform the last rites. And this will be bestowed only on Kaikeyi's son and not Kaushalya's son. That is why he says, Kaikeyais chavasishtardam dadau putrartha karanat. So he will only be a putra later. Well, this was given to Kaikeyi. How much is remaining? 12.5. He could have given this to Kaushalya, made it 62.5 overall for Kaushalya. But he did not like Kaushalya so much. He liked only Kaikeyi. But he could not give Kaikeyi 50% because Kaikeyi is diet conscious. She will tell this has so much of calories. Then what he did, he thought for some time whom to give this to. What I would have done, I would have consumed that poison. But Dasharatha thought for some time, what should I do? Look at the beauty. He waited for some time and gave that remaining portion of 12.5% to Sumitra. The shlokam goes, Pradadau chavasishtardham payasasyamrutopamam. Look at the words. He gave away the ambrosia of the remaining payasam. What is ambrosia of remaining payasam? I don't know how many of you will manage to remember this. If the mothers would feed their children with curd rice or whatever, the last bit of that curd rice, the child will refuse to have. Because she has already fed the child with so much of food. But when the child refuses to have, the mother will say, see, this will be very tasty. If you consume this, you will become like a little elephant. You remember? That is the only blessing of our mother which has turned true. She would have dreamt of so many other things. So she will give the remaining food. So the last part of your tasty food is called Amritam. Payasasyamrutopamam. It is equivalent to ambrosia. And this was given to Anuchintya Sumitrayai Punareva Mahamatihi. The intellectual king, the intelligent king called as Dasharatha, gave away the remaining payasam to Sumitra. Why did he give to Sumitra? Because, see, if the order of the payasam would determine the order of the birth of children, then how should the children have been born? First, Kaushalya was given, Rama should have been born. Next, Sumitra was given, Lakshmana should have been born. Next, Kaikeyi was given, correct? In our payasam distribution. But it did not happen like that. Rama was born, Bharata was born, and later Lakshmana, Shatrughna were born. Why? Because when Kaushalya was given the payasam, she consumed. The king noticed that. When Sumitra was given her 25%, she had to consume, but she did not. The king was wondering, why is she not consuming? After 12.5 was given to Kaikeyi, she consumed. And after Kaikeyi had consumed, Sumitra consumed. Why? Because Sumitra thought, if by chance my son is born elder to Kaikeyi's son, then he may lose the kainkaryam, the fortune of serving that boy, because he is born elder to him. So my children, son or sons, whoever is born, should end up serving the other children, because serving devotees is more important than serving the Lord. So let me wait till Kaikeyi finishes, and after Kaikeyi had finished, she consumed. That is when the king thought, with such a great quality in her, she should be the recipient for the remaining payasam also, and gave away the remaining payasam. That is why two children who were born to her ended up serving the other two children. Rama was served by Lakshmana and Bharata was served by Shatrughna. One was a servant of the Lord and one was a servant of the devotee. Bhagavat Seshatvam and Bhagavata Seshatvam were a part of them. So this payasam had to be distributed. Now, before this, what had happened in Sri Vaikuntham? It is said that in the Karya Vaikuntham, all the devas had gathered and they prostrated at the lotus feet of the Lord and said that we have been tormented by the antisocial activities of Ravana and his brothers who have been stationed in Lanka. His brothers have been troubling the saints in Dandakaranyam as well, so you need to be born and you should vanquish them in the battle. The Lord said, don't worry, you have performed Sharanagathy at my feet. Siddha Gandharva Yakshasta Tatastvam Sharanam Gataha Tvam Gatif Paramadeva Sarvesham Nah Parantapa. Don't worry, I will be born on earth. While I am being born, you devas shall be born as monkeys and you shall be aiding me in the process of annihilating these demons. So Vayu's Amshavataram was Hanuman, Agni's Amshavataram was Nila, Vishwakarma's Amshavataram was Nala, Then Indra's Amshavataram was Vali, and Surya's Amshavataram was Sugreeva. So all these monkeys were supposed to be born. And here 12 months had passed away. Now they had turned pregnant, and then after that 12 months it took for them to deliver. Is there a problem here? Why? Because as far as we know, there are only 3 trimesters. 3 into 3, 9, 40 weeks. How can it be 12? Valid question. Now, what will some of the answers that you will get? In those days, it was 12. Later, it has turned 9. This is how we will get answers? No. Ayurveda Shastram tells the sperm that has to fertilize the ovum stays with the father for 3 months. So that sperm goes and fertilizes the ovum, which is for a period of 9, 3 trimesters, 3 into 3, 9. So this 3 months where the sperm is housed in the father, plus that 9 months makes it 12. Tatascha dvadashe mase chaitre navamike tithau. So after 12 months comes the birth of Rama. Tatascha dvadashe mase chaitre navamike tithau nakshatre aditi deivatye swocha samstheshu panchasu graheshu karkate lagne vakpata vinduna saha prodhyamane jagannatham sarvaloka namaskritam kausalya janayadramam divyalakshana sanyutam tatascha dvadashe mase. After 12 months, Chaitre, in the month of Chaitra, Navami ke tithau, Tithi was Navami, Nakshatre Aditi Devatye, she was born in the constellation where Aditi rules. That constellation is called Punarvasu. Vasu means wealth. Where those people who are born in the nakshatram of Punarvasu will gain what they have lost as wealth. How many of you have Punarvasu as your nakshatra? Any Punarvasu stars here? If any of you have doubts that you may lose your phone or something, give it to him. He will get it back. Because people who are born in Punarvasu star will gain what they have lost. This is what Shastram tells, Punarvasu. Navami Tithi. People who are born in Navami Tithi will have one disadvantage, tells Jyotisha Shastram. They will leave some balance. That is why in Ramayanam, Rama will always leave one balance. If he fought Subahu and Maricha, he will kill Subahu and leave Maricha. If he fights the 14,000 demons in Janasthana, he will kill 13,999 demons and leave the one called Akampana. So it's called Slesha Bhavam. So every Tithi will have an advantage and disadvantage. Look at his Jatakam. You know, I don't know how many of you know. Our ancestors used to say, have Rama's Jatakam in your house. Here the Jatakam goes, Graheshu Karkate Lakne Vakpata Vinduna Saha. I don't know how many of you know Jatakam. There is something called Lagnadhipati. From Lagnam you have to count. In Lagnam, Rama had Vakpata Vinduna Saha. So he had Vakpati and Indu. Vakpati is Brihaspati, Guru. And Indu, who is Chandra. Chandra, Moon and Jupiter were in the same house. What is the problem in having Jupiter and Moon in the same house? Generally, they are not likable planets to each other, because don't think I'm talking in a very crude language. Just to make us understand, it comes in Bhagavatam as well. Chandra has an illicit relationship with Brihaspati's wife Tara. And through that relationship is born a son called Buddha. Of the Navagrahas, Buddha is the son of Chandra, but his initial is B. Because he was treated as a son by Brihaspati, but originally he was a son of Chandra. So he had to be C Buddha. But later Brihaspati, out of magnanimity, called him B Buddha. Okay. So Brihaspati and Chandra don't share a great relationship. But in a Jatakam, if Ketu is in a position, I hope I'm not boring you. Ketu is in the position, if the 12th or the 2nd position is empty in a Jatakam from Lagnam, then they will checked for a yogam called as Kemadruma Yogam. Kemadruma Yogam in many cases can lead to separation of couples. So Rama had the 12th place where it was Ketu. So because that house was not empty, in Tamil it is called Mayir Yelai. Just by a little chance, there was no separation from his wife, but the inertia was there. That is why he had to be separated from his wife quite a few times in his life. Once in the exile, she was kidnapped. Second, when she was pregnant, she had to go to the forest. So this happened. So in Rama's Jatakam, there are 5 grahas in the exalted state. It is called Uchasthanam. So Pancha Uche Lokanayakaha, if in a Jatakam, if there are 5 grahas which are in an exalted state, then that person will become a world leader, tells Jyotishya Shastram. Pancha Uche Lokanayakaha. So this is the position of Rama's Jatakam. Why did I discuss Rama's Jatakam? Because Jyotishya Shastram is extremely important in Sanātana Dharma, but not the way we perceive it today. Every day we are getting one phalan for our Rashi. Oh, people of Dhanur Rashi, today your lucky number is 5, lucky color is blue. That person will keep wearing blue. In Jyotishya Shastram, you cannot decide the fortune day after day. There is no provision in that. And you should not even research on your Jatakam unnecessarily. If you have no other work, let us see. You should never research your Jatakam. In those days, it used to be done either for performing a yajnam or for marriage. That's all. You should not research your Jatakam like how we are researching it today. When the Guru Payarchi happens, when Shani Payarchi happens, the entire world will be looking to what is going to be the phalan. This is not the way that we have to look into Jyotishya Shastram. Well, Kaushalya gave birth to Rama. And next star in Pushya Nakshatram. You know what is the anybody of Pushya Nakshatram here? Pushya Nakshatra, Pusam. Good Nakshatram it is. You know what is Pushya Nakshatram famous for? In Ayurveda Shastram it is said, if you have to administer medicine to a patient, and if you don't have any time-bound rules to administer, for example vaccines or anything, or even some concoctions which are meant to boost your immunity, if it is once a month, Ayurveda Shastram tells, take it on the day of Pushya Nakshatram. When you take it on the day of Pushya Nakshatram, the efficacy of the medicine is higher, says Jyotishya Shastram. That is why in Ayurveda Shastram there is one vaccine or immunity drops called as Swarna Bindu Bashpam for small children that will be administered only on Pushya Nakshatram day. Next is Aslesha Nakshatram, which is called Ayilyam, which we often say is the star of the snakes. So Lakshmana and Shatrughna, the twins, were born on Aslesha Nakshatram. As these children were born, Kausalyayai Narapatihi, Kausalya Janayadramam Divya Lakshana Sayyutam. This little boy who was born was extremely handsome. He had Saundaryam and Lavanyam in him. Vasishtha was called and he was asked, please give the name to this child. He said, Rama. Ramo Vigrahavandav Ramayatiti Ramaha. The moment you see him, you will fall in love with him. If you go to today, incidentally, while I have visited this temple many a times, while I was going around, I was, of course they said, each deity represents one famous kshetram in Bharatadesham. Like for example, Lord Shiva comes from Ramanathapuram, Rameshwaram. Similarly, there is a Krishna who is very, very similar, identical to Udupi, the kshetram from Karnataka. There is Ananta Padmanabha Swami of Kerala. There is of course the very famous Venkateshwara Swami of Tirumala, Tirupati. I had darshanam of all the deities. But you know which deity in my eyes resembled very close to the kshetram? It was Bhadrachala Rama. He was very similar to how we see in Bhadrachalam. If you go to Bhadrachalam, you can see a similar Rama. If you just cut your eyes and position yourself on the banks of Godavari, you can very well sing Adigo Bhadradri Gautami ఇదిగో చూడండి అనుపమానమై అతి సుందరమై ధనరు చక్రములు ధగధగ మెరిసిది అదిగో భద్రాద్రి గౌతమి ఇదిగో చూడండి. Rama is Ramayatiti Rama. In Bharatanatyam Shastram, when a dancer stands, even if they are standing on the stage, they should not stand like one soldier. There is a form called as Tribhangam, where you will have to bend your hand, your knee and your foot in such a way that 3 parts of your body is bent. It's called as Tribhangam. If you see Rama in most of the kshetrams, he will be in the Tribhanga kolam. I don't know how many of you will want to visit India in a few months from now. Please do visit a kshetram called Vaduvur in the state of Tamil Nadu. Closer to Mayavaram and Mannargudi is a little hamlet called as Vaduvur. Rama there is extremely beautiful. Well, there is another hamlet called as Tillai Vilaham. There also Rama is extremely beautiful. Very close to the capital of Chennai is Madhurantakam, who is called Yeri Kattaramar, Karunakara, extremely beautiful. You go to Tanjavur, you will have a kshetram of Rama called as Punnainallur, Shalagrama Triveni. He is extremely beautiful. In Karnataka, there is a small hamlet, again closer to Bangalore. It is called as Hireemagaluru. Hireemagaluru, Chikkamaluru. There are 2 cities. So Hireemagaluru Rama is extremely pretty. Why to leave Kerala? Beautiful kshetram close to Thrissur is called Thiruprayar. So Thiruprayar is a kshetram where the great Sengalipuram Anantarama Dikshitar has performed a mandalam of Ramayanam there. Of course, there is Bhadrachalam. So wherever Rama is found, Ramayatiti Ramaha. There are many other kshetrams. Extremely beauty. Ramayatiti Ramaha Kalyanam Nidhanam Kalimathamathanam Pavanam Pavananam. So the name Rama was given. Next, to Kaikeyi son. Kaikeyi asked Vasishta, what name are you going to give to my son? Bharataha Rajya Bharana, the one who is going to support the kingdom, bear the kingdom, is called as Bharata. In reality, did he bear the kingdom? The kingdom was given to him, like on a golden platter you give it to someone. But what did he say? I will not rule Ayodhya. My brother Rama has to come and rule. I will not run this kingdom. So even when the kingdom was given to him, he did not rule. But what does his name state? Bharataha Rajya Bharana. He took the burden of supporting his kingdom. No. Then what did he support? There is a beautiful reference in Ayodhya Kandam. Please listen to this. In Ayodhya Kandam, Shatrughna pulls Manthara in front of Bharata and says, Bharata, for all the anguish that we are suffering, this lady who has come from Afghanistan is the problem. Because she belonged to KK Desham, which is Afghanistan. So this lady has come and caused all the atrocities that we are bearing. I said, how do you blame her? It is because of her. She brainwashed your mother Kaikeyi, and that is why we are all bearing the brunt of her atrocities. No Shatrughna. Manthara Kuni is not the cause. Yeah, you are right, my dear brother Bharata. It is not she who is the cause. Your mother Kaikeyi listened to the words of Manthara. Your mother is the cause. My mother Kaikeyi is not the cause, Shatrughna. Well, yes, your mother is not the cause, because your mother did state that she wanted you to rule Ayodhya and Rama to go to the forest. Where did the intellect of our dear father Dasharatha go? Dasharatha is at fault. Dasharatha is not at fault at all, Shatrughna. Yeah, it must be our brother Rama. Just because our father said you have to go to the forest, he went. He should have sued our father to drag him to the courts. No, Rama is not at fault. If Manthara is not at fault, if Kaikeyi is not at fault, if Dasharatha is not at fault, if Rama is not at fault, who has committed the mistake? Shatrughna. If Bharata, a person called Bharata, did not exist, all these things wouldn't have happened. So it is me who is the cause of all of this. Naneda naiduga. So Bharata bore the burden of a mistake that he had not committed. So he was called Bharata. Then the other two sons was Sumitra. Sumitra was wanting that she had to have the names of her sons out of servitude. That is when he said, Lakshmano Lakshmi Sampannaha. This boy will be the richest of all. Who? Lakshmana. 14 years he was in the forest. What richest? He was sweeping, mopping, washing the utensils, cooking. Lockdown, no lockdown, it didn't make any difference to him. What wealth did he have? Kaikariya Lakshmi. He had the wealth of serving Rama. To him that was wealth. Shatrugnaha, Nitya Shatrugnaha, the one who has won over enemies. Shatrugna did not take part in any yuddham. He is called Shatrugna. In Chennai, the person will be called Kannairam. Rendu kanne theriyadu. Kannairam. So the father would have christened his son out of great love that he will have for Rama and Ramayana. But that person will have no belief in Rama. He is Yan Ram. So names may not have any link to that person at all. Here the names were given. Now they had to make the children sleep. Kaushalya was nowhere close to music. She did not know what is Kalyani and what is Bhairavi. For her all swaras were the same. See, for some of them may not enjoy music. If you tell, இந்த இடத்துல அப்படியே நிஷாதத்தை தூக்கினா பாருங்க, எதை தூக்கினா? நிஷாதத்தை. They did one beautiful graha bedam here, went into Yaman and came outside. How did they go and come out? So she was extremely talented in outsourcing it. She outsourced it to two gentlemen. One was Tyagaraja Swami and second was Kulashekara Perumal. Manapugal Kausalaitan Manivaidu Vaitavane Tenilangai Kor Mudigal Sindhu Vitasham Puncher Kanninanma Amadil Pudaishur Kanapuratin Karmaniye Ennudaya Innamude Raghavane Talelo Navamohana Mulaina Surasatulu Vivaramuga Padagana Bhagyama Navaratna Mantapamuna Tyagaraja Vinuta Hridibunina Sri Rama Viyalaluga. So this is how they put Rama to sleep. Tulsidas describes how the Ranis used to run after their children. Kilaki kilaki uthata dhaya girata bhumi lata pataya dhaya mat godlet Dasharatha ki Raniya thumak chalat Ramachandra Bajat pejaniya thumak chalat Ramachandra. So the childhood of Rama was born, Lakshmana was born, Shatrugna was born, Bharata was born. Bhattadri in Srimad Narayaniyam summarizes this. Girvanairarthyamano dashamukhanidhanam kosalesh vrishyashringe putriyam ishtimishtva dadushi dasharatha bhrite payasagryam tadbhuktva tadpurandhrishvapi trishu susamam jata gadbha sujato Ramaswam Lakshmanena Swayam Atha Bharatena Api Shatrughna Namna. This is how the 4 children were born. The beauty is, tomorrow when we meet, I will say Rama was at the age of 12, and then we will have Tatakavadam, Subahuvadam, Maricha will be driven away, Ahalyo Dharanam, Dhanubhedam, and then Sita Kalyanam. I will say that Rama was 12 years of age. There is one beautiful title in Tamil these days. Nadavil Konjam Pakkatta. What happened in the middle? He was born today. Tomorrow 12 years. You are not describing what happened between that, because there is nothing worthwhile to describe. Why? Because Rama was extremely obedient to his parents. When you have obedient children, you will not have memories at all. Only when you have disobedient children, parents and the teachers will remember that child for eternity. If you are an obedient child, no teacher will remember. Only if you are disobedient, you are troubling your teachers, the teacher will remember you. Weren't you from the 95 batch who caused so much? See, that is why in Bhagavatam, in Krishna Avataram, between his birth and his age of 12, we will have Putanabadam, Shakatasura Bhanjanam, Kaliyanartanam, Govardhanodharanam, Rasa Krida, killing of Kamsa, lifting. Everything will happen by the age of 12. Here, if you check Rama, very obedient. You know, tomorrow when we meet, the first shlokam in Ramayanam is, father was worried that his son was not married. Darakriyam Prati. He was not worried that my son is not married. Son was at the age of 12. Father is worrying, my son is not married. That is when Vishwamitra comes. Vishwamitra comes and asks, why are you worried? My son is not married. How will he get married? What is the greatness of your son? He listens to his parents, then he will never get married. So, that is when he takes him on the 6th day sojourn to the forest to kill Tataka and so on, so that somewhere his curriculum by days gets filled. I killed Tataka, gave Ahalyo Dharanam. Otherwise, what was his only advantage? Listening to his parents. That is a big disadvantage. So, Ramayanam begins after Rama was at the age of 12. Bhagavatam gets completed by Krishna at the age of 12. So this is how the difference that we see. The other difference is, see, when a leaf is laid, traditionally, you will have sambar, which is kolambu coming first. Then you will have rasam or saru or shatramadu coming next. After that, what will come? You have to leave, sir. Nothing will come. Diet. And what will come? Akkara vadishil or payasam. Sweet will come. And after that, curd rice will come. So sweet, payasam will come, and then comes curd rice. How did Ramayanam begin? Payasam. How does Bhagavatam begin? Masilla kabalam, curd rice. In Malayalam there is a saying, treat the utterings of 2 people as sacrosanct. One is that of a parrot and the other is that of little children. In Tamil there is a saying, little children never speak lies. It's what they believe. I don't know, in Kaliyugam that may also change. But now little children and parrots, when they utter something, treat that as the ultimate truth, is a saying in Malayalam. Who utters Ramayanam, Lava and Kusha as children, sing what has been composed by their teacher Valmiki in front of Rama's eyes. Children utter. So children, if they speak, that is the truth. So Ramayanam spoken by the children Lava and Kusha is the truth. Who utters Bhagavatam? Shuka Brahmam, who is a parrot. So parrot utters Bhagavatam, which is the truth. Children utter Ramayanam, which is the truth. Here is Payasam, here is Masrila Kabalam. Here it begins after 12, here it gets completed before 12. One is by Vasishtha, the other is by his great grandson called as Shuka. Vyasam, Vasishthanaptaram, Shaktev Pautram, Parasharatmajam, Shukatatam. If Vyasa is the great grandson of Vasishtha, Shuka is the great grandson of Vasishtha. So Vasishtha starts Ramayanam, Shuka completes this loop with Bhagavatam. This is a Navaham and this is a Saptaham. So this is how comparisons are made by our Acharyas. Tomorrow See, in the span of 24,000 shlokas of Ramayanam, 24,000 shlokas, 7 cantos, Balakandam, Ayodhya Kandam, Aranya Kandam, Kishkinda Kandam, Sundara Kandam, Yuddha Kandam, Uttara Kandam. 7 cantos, 24,000 shlokas. The Paddhati followed in Pravachanam is, we stop with Rama Pattabhishekam, which comes close to the 21st thousand. We stop. Not that the next 3,000 should not be read, but we Indians love only happy endings in the movies. The hero should get together with the heroine and then we have to put Vanakkam, Namaste, Shubham. We don't like tragic ends. But the truth is we have to accept Ramayana the way it is. But in Pravachanam, the Paddhati is I have to stop with Rama Pattabhishekam, which is the 21st thousand. Today, how much have I completed? Close to 800 verses. So I am left with 20,200 verses, because the next 1,700 verses will get completed tomorrow with Sita Kalyanam. Then Ayodhya Kandam, what happened in that 1 week? Rama's before birth, boyhood, marriage till the age of 24. 24 years, 2,200 shlokas. What happened in 1 week when the Pattabhishekam had to happen and it didn't happen? 5,500 shlokas. So look at the emotions that will run in Ayodhya Kandam. That will be in day 3 and day 4. Chitrakuta Gamanam and Paduka Pattabhishekam. So Ramayanam is a journey. The moment you start traveling with the speaker and with the content in Ramayanam, you will feel as if the incidents are happening right in front of your eyes. And those few moments when you imagine and when you create that canvas in front of you will aid, will help in pushing away the worries that we have in our current life. That is why in those days, how many ever times you listen, you still keep listening to Ramayanam and Bhagavatam. As you listen, you get cleansed and you feel that there are many answers to the questions that have been pondering you for years together that you will receive in the due course of the lecture. So tomorrow, same time between 3 and 5 p.m. I shall be rendering Sita Kalyanam lecture. Generally, in those days, speakers used to give this as a USP for any Kalyanam lecture. Those of you who have children who want to get married, please bring them to the lecture. I don't tell any of these things these days, because they have the right to make their own choices. Let them decide. And don't, even if they have the intent of coming, the moment you say this, they won't come. So, bring them to this lecture if you feel that they have the patience to sit for a 2 hours plus lecture. Because 120 minutes, you have to keep looking at a not so great person on the stage. There is no visual treat waiting here for you. All you're just listening. So this requires a lot of patience from your side, which I can see, which is housed in all of you. If you feel that there are some Homo sapiens around you who have similar patience, please do bring them for the lecture tomorrow as well. From Monday, the lecture will be between 7 and 9 p.m. to aid those people who are working, who can come even in the late night and listen. Kavitarkika Simhaya Kalyana Gunashaline Srimate Venkateshaya Vedanta Gurave Namaha Swastif Prajabhyav Pariparayantam Nyayena Margena Mahin Mahishaha Gobrahmanebhya Shubham Astu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Kayena Vacha Manasendriyeva Buddhyatmana Va Prakriti Swabhavat Karomi Yatyat Sakalam Parasmai Sriman Narayanayeti Samarpayami. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dushyant, for this wonderful lecture. Thank you so much for transforming all of us. I'm sure nobody wants to leave this hall. They would like to continue with the Ramayanam, but they have to wait till tomorrow. We'll start at 3 o'clock again tomorrow for the Sita Kalyanam. Thank you so much. We do have a donation plate. Please, this program will help us with the donations. And we do have the Mahotsavam flyer and the sponsorship forms at the back of the hall. Please do sponsor for the Mahotsavam. And tomorrow morning at 11, we will have the Sita Kalyanam and Devasana Pattabhishekam. Please do join us for the Sita Kalyanam. And this evening, we have Dampati Puja at 6:30. Thank you so much.